So why does Penn State football always finish 10-2 every season? It's simple, really, because they act like a 10-2 team.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Penn State fans? That is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, bringing you all things Penn State sports coverage. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use a promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. And if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest analysis, the latest discussions around your favorite Penn State sports. This is more than just a Penn State football show. We're talking recruiting, men's basketball, men's hockey, wrestling, all of it here on Locked On Nittany Lions. We welcome him back. It's not Sunday, but it's still fitting to talk to the Lord. Jason Lord is here with us on the show. As I like, Jason, I enjoy bringing you on the show for these bigger picture type of discussions. And the question that I've just been, and it's something that everybody else has been probably wondering, pondering for a while, and I think it's good to answer in the offseason here. Why is Penn State always 10-2? Well, this is the simple answer. It's easy, Jason, because Penn State behaves like a 10-2 program. From the way that they spend money to the way that the coaching staff is, and we'll break that all down in this first segment here. But they act like a 10-2 program, so therefore you're going to get 10-2 results. Penn State is really, really good, but if we're talking 11-1 consistently, pushing in for the college football playoff, I know it's 12 teams, but getting to now the goal is to get to the semifinal, be a top 4 team. Penn State's not going to do that until they change two things in my mind. But for you, do you believe that they can push past this 10-2, this 10-2 curse, if you will?
I think the schedule helps them a little bit this year. It is a challenging schedule, but I think there's a chance they can, yes. But I agree with you. There's times they do act like a 10-2 team, and I think part of that is because they haven't gotten over that hump yet. I think when a team gets over that hump, you act a lot less like a 10-2 team. So they have to do that first. They've got to beat a team they're not supposed to beat, and that starts obviously with Ohio State. Michigan's not on the schedule this year, but and every other year you're talking about Ohio State and Michigan, and part of that is what we've talked about for so long is the talent gap, that it's still there. And I think you can make the argument it's probably widened a little bit in the offseason because Ohio State's probably had as good of an offseason as anybody in my mind. And they're a 10-2 team at times because they act like it. And you go back to your point about the money. I think as a university, they're willing to spend money, but I also think they need that nudge to spend the money first. And that's the other part of it. I just, it's where I think they along with a lot of other universities underestimated what NIL was going to do, underestimated that there was not going to be stability for it, underestimated that you would have needed the amount of funding you need for it. And for that reason, I think they're behind the 8 ball quite a bit on it. They still are. They have gotten a lot better, especially at other sports. I think basketball, Micah Shrewsbury really opened their eyes to what they were going to have to do with NIL, without a doubt. And I think Coach Rhodes certainly can thank Micah a little bit for that. But is Penn State not willing to spend money in spots sometimes? Yes, but I also think when you nudge them a little bit and you give them the understanding that, okay, we spend money here, we make money because of spending money here, suddenly it's a much different argument. So I agree with you in there in a lot of ways. I think they do act at times like 10-2 is okay. And look, 10-2 is better than a lot of other programs. That's one thing you do have to look at. But the other part of it, to your point, it's not the pinnacle. It's not here. It's here. You want to be.
Exactly. And there's no alignment. So James Franklin's correct when there hasn't been alignment previously. So this goes back to when he started 2013, took over for O'Brien in 2014. And then now here, 10 years later, going into his 11th season, there's finally alignment because the politics of it prevent the finances from being where they are. Let's put it into perspective. Penn State is a top 10 team because they spend money like a top 10 team.
They make money too.
So Georgia's number one in recruiting money. Georgia spends the most money by far. It's not even close. I think the average for them over a 5-year span was over $20 million. Penn State's in the top 10, but they're fringe top 10. So therefore, look at that. So Georgia always has a top 3 recruiting class because they spend top 3 recruiting money. Penn State always has a top 10 to top 15 recruiting class because on average, they're spending about, I think it was 10th, 11th, depending, they spent about 12 million. But there is so much when you devote $8 million more to recruiting, you can do a lot with recruiting there. And that's why Georgia has won national championships. But then there's also the coaching staff part of it. So this also ties into the finances too. Before Pat Kraft, Mike Yurcich wasn't Penn State's first option. He never was. But James Franklin, I think, somewhat alluded to that he never got his first choice at offensive coordinator. And then Manny Diaz became that first choice at defensive coordinator. Now Andy Kotelnicki and Tom Allen. So there's this finally there's this alignment in the past 2 years, but that's only the past 2 years. You got your top choices there. You didn't get your top choice at OC when you made that hire back with Mike Yurcich, and look at the consequences of it. But then there's also the way the coaching staff, and this is particularly about James Franklin. Jason, how many times do you see Ryan Day, Kalen DeBoer, Jim Harbaugh have these viral press conference clips of going back and forth with a beat reporter? Corey Geiger has been on the show, getting a little testy, getting a little heated with Dave Jones when asked a question that he didn't really like, and the answer was a non-answer. The just throw it deep stuff, right? That is unacceptable. Elite programs have no tolerance for those kinds of distractions. And I felt like James played into that. We go to practice and I get on footage of him yelling, just throw it deep, joking around and stuff. And at the end of the day, Corey Geiger was right. Corey Geiger was right about all of it, that the downfield passing game is what held Penn State back. And it just became a big joke. And Coach Franklin played into it. That is why they're a 10-2 team, because they do stuff like that.
I'll go to your first point first with the coordinators. I think you need continuity and you need stability no matter what. And no matter what's going to be there, no matter what your choices are, it's almost like the two kids fighting in the back of a car on a vacation trip. Who cares who started it? Knock it off. And that's kind of where you're at here. You need to have stability and continuity at those positions, or you're not going to have effectiveness. And that's what we saw last year with Penn State offensively. They weren't effective. Did they not have receivers that could get separation? Yes, they lacked it in a big way there. I understand that entirely. But you still did not have the continuity that you were looking for. And you haven't had that at times since Joe Moorhead has left. And that's why now, okay, you've got your choice. At this point, you need that stability. You need that continuity. You can't play the blame game no matter what. It doesn't work, and you have to move on from it. Great coaches over time, they may play the blame game short term. They don't do it in the long term. And to your second point, yeah, you can't. I've always said for a long time, as a quarterback and as a coach, both, you can't be thin-skinned. Those are the two spots on a team where you have to be able to handle the criticism. You have to be able to handle the questions, whether they're valid or whether they're not. You are, as at press conferences, going to get questions where the person that asked the question clearly doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm not saying Corey wasn't right. I think he was in that spot. I agree with you there.
It was a misworded question, but he knew what he was asking.
He knew what he was asking, yes. But there are going to be other reporters that ask questions that are, even the legendary reporters ask questions that they let slip away sometimes.
They have an off day too. Yeah.
Yes, and this is where, look, people make fun of Bill Belichick. That never affected him on the field. It just never did. And that's what you have to do as a coach, as tough as it is. That's what you have to do as a quarterback, as tough as it is. Those are the two positions where you can't let those reporters get to you. You can't let analysts get to you. And Ryan Day, does he do it in a press conference back and forth? No. But I still, even you go back to the Notre Dame game with Lou Holtz's comments. I'm not even sure you say that on the interview. Those are the things where you just keep in-house.
But it wasn't leading up to game week. They had won the game and proved the doubters wrong. So I agree with you. I agree with you, though, that Ryan Day does say some things that will go viral, and that's fine. But for the entire week of some of the most important games, the most important stretches of the season, and Penn State was in the media conversation for the wrong reason. You were on Pat McAfee and went viral for an unnecessary 2.5-minute rant towards a reporter that misworded his question. And you can't tell me that wasn't a distraction. And again, they played into it. They thought it was a big, funny joke, and it resulted in 2 losses once again and playing second fiddle to whoever, Ohio State, Michigan, doesn't matter. And this even goes back to before when Michigan was in the national championship. Minnesota knocked off their season, right? When they were supposed to. Iowa knocked off their season when they were undefeated and trying to avoid that second loss. So it's not like it's just Ohio State and Michigan. Other teams have disrupted Penn State from better. Michigan State.
Yeah, Michigan State a couple times. And it's where a lot of times as a coach, you can't let a team beat you twice. As players, you can't let a team beat you twice. Penn State's let a team beat them twice a couple times now over the years. I think that's very clear. They have been in occurrences where I think are 1 in a million, like the Michigan State and East Lansing a couple of years back, obviously with the lightning delay. And, that happens once every blue moon. But there are times where I think for this Penn State team, a team has beaten them twice. And look, as a coach, you just can't allow that sometimes. And but no, to your point, Zach, I agree with you. You cannot let anything outside that locker room get to you. It doesn't matter if you're a player or you're a coach, and it's magnified at the head coaching position. It's magnified at the quarterback position. You see the legendary quarterbacks over time, even in college football, pro football, no matter what it is, they didn't let the things like that get to them, and they won because they use that as motivation. When they say they don't listen, they're full of it. They listen to that kind of stuff, but they don't at all worry about it. They don't take it public. And that's where I think you run into the problems, because if you take that public, that runs your mind for the next 2 or 3 days, you're out of routine. And to me, in terms of being here at Penn State, Joe Paterno, in terms of preparation, in terms of big games, I'm not sure I'd ever take a coach over him. And there's bias there, of course. But in terms of a straight routine, I don't know if I've seen a guy more routine-oriented than James Franklin. And that's the kind of thing that throws you out of routine when you do those kind of things. I agree with you. You can't let that stuff get to you no matter what. And, that can lose you games. There's no question about it. The outside distractions, you want to limit them as much as you possibly can. And you're basically egging them on if you let them go on for 2 or 3 days like Penn State did in that circumstance.
So let's see if Penn State can buck the trend. They are spending more money. They were able to go get their first target in Andy Kotelnicki, Tom Allen. So those things have changed. But as far as the distractions, they got to find a way to minimize that. Going into an expanded Big Ten conference, it's going to get even more challenging. Now, in this upcoming segment, Jason, college football's a mess. You have teams, schools rumored to move conferences once again. You also have coaches moving wherever, committing to one program for 1 week, and then you're somewhere else another week. Coaches who are at the top of the mountain in college football and take a step backward or just accept another job completely out of the blue. We're going to break down why it is a mess, why it is the way it is on the other side of this break. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of your favorite sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I've used the Gametime app. Some of my favorite features about the Gametime experience are the flash deals that you get on last-minute tickets. So not only are you getting great tickets last minute, but you get discounts on those tickets. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. It's all sorted and ready for you, so you're not looking around trying to find what events are going to be near you. And probably the best feature, image views of the seats. You're not second guessing. You're not wondering what your point of view is going to be like at the venue, at the event. You already know ahead of time with using Gametime. Lowest price guarantee and event cancellation protection are included. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And the Locked On Podcast Network is making history. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, and now you can find it available on the free Fire TV Channels app. College football is broken. It's been broken since NIL took over the transfer portal, and you have these two unethical entities coming together and destroying the world of college football. That's why you see head coaches drop down and just go back to coaching football. Just, yes, you're going to have to do some of the NIL stuff and the transfer portal stuff, but not as much as the head coach. You're also seeing guys who are the head coach of Boston College. Just get out of it completely. You are the leader of a program in the ACC, a major power conference, and you go to an expanded power conference, and you go and take the defensive coordinator job in the NFL. No, that's an even. I think that's an even transition. You get to the NFL, you're a defensive coordinator. That's pretty. But everybody wants to be a head coach, but not anymore. Not anymore. There are so many headaches with what is going on in college football right now. James Franklin had a press conference Tuesday, February 13th, probably to talk about winter, to talk about winter workouts and go over, spring football is going to be starting soon for the Nittany Lions. And he was asked, like, hey, where is college football headed? And he says, well, we all know this. It's trending in the wrong direction. And coach, you couldn't have summed it up better in a few words, because it is not trending in the right direction. It is terrible. NIL is awful, Jason. It's stupid. I hate NIL so much. The transfer portal, I understand, because when you're a student, not a student athlete, you can freely go to whatever school you want. So I understand that. But it's NIL, which is inducing a lot of these transfer portal movements, because it's not just, I had a good season. Like, look at Quinshon Judkins, for example. You mean to tell me there wasn't any alleged tampering in that? You were the face of that Ole Miss team in the SEC. And somebody says, and that's the thing. James Franklin and Pat Kraft have said that we have had agents contact our players who are not in the transfer portal. Why would you want to be a head coach in college football anymore? Yes, there's the money. Yes, there's the notoriety. Yes, there's the fame. But Jason, you are now becoming an accountant. You're becoming a promoter. You're becoming a business manager, and not so much a football. You are truly becoming more of a CEO. We talk about that with Franklin. And less of a football coach day by day by day.
Yeah, I can't disagree at all with that, Zach. I think as far as NIL being completely stupid, I think the athletes are getting what they deserve in the sense.
No, I think so too. But the NIL model is dumb.
Yeah, the model. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the model is completely terrible. There's no sugarcoating it. And I think part of that is, there's piece of garbage rolling on the floor, and there's 5 people standing there staring at it, hoping which one's going to pick it up and throw it out. That's what NIL's at right now. I think Charlie Baker, as the president of the NCAA, is looking at it saying, hey, who's going to stabilize this? Are we going to go to a federal level? Are they going to stabilize it? Are we going to have to stabilize it? Or maybe we can just pass it down to the schools and they'll stabilize it. Either way, it's a mess. And it's got to be better. James Franklin's absolutely right. It's not in a good spot right now. And that's paraphrasing, obviously, what he said. But no, it's really not. There's no question about it. And as far as coaches go, you're right. You either adapt or you get out. And there are legendary coaches that have gotten out. Mike Krzyzewski's gotten out. Jay Wright's gotten out. Nick Saban.
This is beyond just football.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no question about it. And then there's guys, Boston College, obviously. You go to be the Packers defensive coordinator. Chip Kelly goes to be the Ohio State offensive coordinator from the head coaching job because he didn't want to be a head coach anymore in college football, and I don't blame him. That is not being a coward. That's being a realist that I can't handle all this stuff. And that's where you as a person look around and say, hey, this can't consistently happen like this. It's a mess. Where's the model going to be? Who's going to stabilize it? How are you going to stabilize it? And what on earth is going to happen? Because now it's reached that point where, and look, it goes beyond football too. How do you pay players in non-revenue sports? Where ultimately the football and basketball program fund those programs. How do you pay these players? It's all for one and one for all at this point, when there should have been a model to begin with, and there should have been some form of stability, and there's absolutely none. And everybody's looking around at everybody saying, hey, who's going to step up and do this? Hey, who's going to be the organization that is going to step in and do something about it? And you're just hoping that somebody not named you is doing it, and it's not the way to go. I agree with you. It's a mess. It's got to get better. Long term, this can't stay the way it is. It just can't. Look, college football has been a big business for many years, and that was long before NIL. I fully understand that without question. And as I said at the beginning, NIL for the players, I absolutely commend them.
Oh, yeah, they should be paid. Oh, yeah, they are. If a business wants to give player XYZ an amount of money to have them sponsor their business, by all means,
they deserve. And, despite the complete chaos that it is, I think from a fan's perspective, when you're looking at it from the outside, is it frustrating for your team? Yes. But let's look at college football as a whole landscape. Has it made the sport better? I think it has. I really do. I think it has made the portals a mess, because it's basically free agency now.
Because of NIL.
Because of
NIL. And there are no consequences. They took the transfer rule where you have to sit out a year if you transfer for a second time. So there are no consequences here, and there's no consequence for shady NIL dealings either.
No, and that's for coaches too. It's not just for players. So, but do you make the argument as a whole? Has it made college football better? A little bit. I think you can say the quality of play maybe is a little bit better. I think you could also say that some people have opted to stay in college longer because of it too. And not necessarily.
And that's the reason. That's the reason. But better players are sticking around, right? Devon, if NIL wasn't around, let's make a Penn State example. Devon Ellies and Hakeem Beamon are going to the NFL draft.
Sure. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. You see it at a lot of other schools that these guys are probably gone. I think jump into Ohio State for 1 second here. Yeah, the portal was incredible for them, the offseason. I'll tell you what was even more incredible is the guys they talked into staying. They talked a lot of guys into staying at Ohio State. So, and that's why that team is going to be a preseason number 1 or number 2 right now, as you're looking at it. And that is a huge challenge in college football, and NIL has helped that. I think there's no doubt it's made the game better for that reason, but it's not excusing your point. I think there is no question it's a total mess. It is chaotic. It's not stable. It can't be this way forever. Something's going to happen that is going to cause a complete disaster, and then finally somebody's going to step in too little, too late. You've seen this in sports too many times to count, and I think this is probably not the greatest comparison known to man, but I use Major League Baseball where it went on strike in 1994, 1997, 1998, 1999 rolls around. You did not jump on the steroid allegations as much as you probably should have, because you knew the money you were making was exponentially great. The interest in baseball was rapidly up. Yep. And then suddenly a couple of years later, you have a total mess. I think you're probably seeing, and again, that comparison's probably not my best, but I think you're getting the main point of it, where at some point you're going to have a mess very similar to that in college football if somebody doesn't step in and stabilize this, whether it's Mr. Baker, the president, whether it is Congress, whether it's whoever it is, whether it's schools.
Needs to be the NCAA. It's what's the point of the NCAA? Why are they been the governing body for this long in college athletics if they are not going to do anything?
No, and they're instead putting it on the conferences and schools and hoping they'll do it.
And then it's being passed on to the fan.
Absolutely,
it's being passed on to the fan. The fan is fronting the bill for the NIL. Because we need donations. If you want you're being guilt tripped. If you want your team to be good and you want your favorite player to stick around in Happy Valley or wherever for a little bit longer, you have to pay more than your season tickets, your season parking passes, your jerseys, your whatever, your tailgating costs, all of your everything.
And how are those fans rewarded with? And this is not the school's fault. Let me make it real clear. This is not the school's fault. But how are those fans rewarded in other ways that aren't the school's fault? Getting 6-day kickoff windows where you have no time to prepare as a family, getting to a game and understand and preparing anything. So there's a lot of things in college football right now that are a total mess. And whether it's NIL, whether it's TV, whatever it is, these things have to get better. I don't think there's any question about it. Look, nobody's perfect. No model is perfect. I understand that. This model's a total mess. It's far from perfect. It's a disaster waiting to happen, and you just hope somebody at some point steps in before it's too little, too late, and semi shifts this mess just a little bit.
Something's got to give, or else more coaches are going to leave for the NFL or just flat out retire. And that's what the final segment is going to be devoted to. The coaching carousel. Coaches are here 1 week, they're gone the next. They're leaving for the NFL because it's less of a headache. You can just coach football. What are the ultimate consequences? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on the other side. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players, your favorite NBA teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Remember, if you're not already, become an everyday or subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest analysis around your favorite Penn State sports. More than just a football show here. We talk everything men's basketball, men's hockey, recruiting, wrestling, and so much more. You can follow Jason on X, formerly known as Twitter, to keep up with him as well. And in this final segment, the ramifications, the consequences of the mess that is college football, and it's getting uglier by the second. We're finally seeing it unfold a little more into what this was going to look like. With it at first, right? It was Mike Krzyzewski stepping down, and like, okay, that's understandable. He's coached for a long time. Then it's Nick Saban, and then you're seeing guys like Chip Kelly, who is a head coach making good money at UCLA. It's not like he went from a Group 5 school and took the head coach at a Group 5 school and then took an offensive coordinator job at a Power 4 school. You went from UCLA, joining the Big Ten Conference, and you take an offensive coordinator job. You're seeing head coaches just leave, or you're seeing anybody, position coaches, head coaches, it doesn't matter, leave for the NFL because there's just not the stress of it. And then Bill O'Brien, one day he's the offensive coordinator, the next day he's the head coach. So there's just all this rapid fire movement around college football with coaches at Ryan Grubb, right? Leaving the offensive coordinator spot to go to the NFL with the Seahawks, leaving Alabama where Kalen DeBoer is. And it makes sense. I don't disagree with any of these coaches making these decisions. We talk about players looking out for themselves in the transfer portal. I do not blame some of these coaches because why did they all get into coaching? To coach players in the sport that they love. And they don't get to do that anymore if you are the head coach of a program in this age of college football, because you have to negotiate business deals and re-recruit your own players. In the NFL, there's a whole department for that, to negotiate and figure out contracts and stuff. You get to call plays, you get to coach those players and help build a team. And you just you have barely a semblance of that in college football anymore. So I don't blame these coaches for making the decisions that they are making.
No, I don't either. I think the stress level goes down a little bit sometimes, and it's not. It's strange saying that when you're leaving a college job for the NFL, but I think it is. I really do. And Chip Kelly's was a really interesting one because he's leaving within the conference. Keep in mind too. I think some people forget sometimes UCLA's in the Big Ten now, and that's the interesting move. I don't think it's because he was a terrible head coach by any means. Could he have been better in the NFL? Absolutely. But I think at the college level, Is he the Chip Kelly that coached Oregon? I'm not sure anymore, but I think he.
Well, college football has changed. Chip Kelly hasn't.
But no, yeah, you're right on 100%. And I think he made UCLA better. They've won 8 games, 4 years in a row now.
They were competitive.
Yeah. 8 or 9 games. So, they were competitive. But I think he left because he didn't want to be a head coach anymore, and I have no shame in that. I have absolutely, as from the outside looking in, I don't begrudge him at all for doing that. And Bill O'Brien, I think, was interesting because he leaves for a head coaching job, but keep in mind he's a Connecticut resident, so – was born, really raised in that area,
Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah. So now, so I think, it's fitting these coaches well. I think from Ohio State perspective, as good as Bill O'Brien could be, and I don't ever judge him at Penn State, as I said last time with you, Zach. Mm-hmm. I don't. You can't fully judge the book by its cover, so to speak. And he really coached Penn State with one hand tied behind his back, obviously, the 2 years he was there because of the circumstances. So I can't fully put judgment on him. But I do think who fits Ryan Day's system at Ohio State better, it's Chip Kelly. I think that is
that's a great hire.
It's a great hire. Scary good fit. And it really is.
And why Bill O'Brien makes that move to go to Boston College, family, familiarity, right? He's going back to where he grew up, and he wants to be a head coach. But there's also Boston College is not in a place where you don't have to beg your 5-star recruits, re-recruit them every single season. Boston College is not in it for the NIL deals and everything else. So there isn't this pressure to constantly rebuild your team. I feel like Bill O'Brien, the goalposts have moved forward. You can go 7-5, 8-4 in the ACC, which he is very capable of doing year in and year out, and you can minimize some of those headaches because that's just not what Boston College is focused on.
No,
they aren't fully entrenched in football. Whereas even if you're the offensive coordinator at Ohio State, there's still that pressure and same thing at Penn State. There's still that pressure, that expectation, like, hey, we got to recruit at a high level, maintain those recruits and keep them happy with NIL, avoid the transfer portal. And I feel like you're going to have some of that. You're going to have some of the players getting contacted by agents. They'll have a really good, the former 3-star will have a great season at Boston College. And then, yes, Bill O'Brien will run into that where an agent contacts them and then eventually they transfer to a different school because of NFL and money and right. But that's going to be for every one instance of that. There's 10 instances of, well, I'm going to enter the transfer portal because my NIL deal is not that great. And that's not Bill O'Brien's responsibility. That's not Chip Kelly's responsibility. That's not Ryan Day's responsibility. It's not James Franklin, Andy Kotelnicki, Tom Allen, none of them.
Well, from a Ryan Day perspective, I think he now looks at it and realizes, hey, I can't do all of this like I was doing. Yep. I've got to bring somebody in to help me, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. And I think
he might leave for the NFL.
At some point, yeah, I think so too. And look, if he doesn't turn around at Ohio State, I think that's very clear. Ryan Day is close.
11-1, turn it around.
That's unbelievable saying that. I know, but it's 11-1. But his record against top 25s is not good. Similar to James Franklin, but here's where they're different. I think Ohio State probably should have won a lot of those games that they lost. I think they should have beat Clemson in the playoff. Fields,
Georgia.
In the end zone. Georgia, they absolutely should have won. Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't go down, and Ohio State doesn't blow a double-digit lead in that game. They win that game. So there's games they should have won, but you go back to it. What do you get judged by more than anything when you coach Ohio State football? It's your record against that team up north, the Michigan. Yeah. Right now, Ryan Day has struggled. And look, circumstances are the circumstances of Michigan. Who knows what's going to happen there, and who knows how much the influence of certain people helped enhance the performance on the field in those 3 years. I don't know that answer, but I do know as of right now in the record books, Ryan Day's not beaten Michigan in the last 3 seasons. So, and I think that's part of it. But I think, he looked at it right now this year and said, hey, I need help doing this. We can be a national championship contender every year as we are right now, but the expectation is going to go even higher. But you bring in a guy like Chip Kelly, who you're familiar with because you worked under him. He was passing game coordinator quarterbacks with the 49ers when Chip was the head coach. So the familiarity there. I think Chip runs and I think it comes down to what you're right. Chip Kelly has not changed his style, but that style still, even though it doesn't work in college football like it used to, when you plug in the pieces, I think it's got the chance to. And I think Ohio State has those pieces. Probably one of the best backfields in college football, and Chip's going to utilize those guys. He's going to run the football quite a bit. He's going to be in shotgun a lot. He's going to pull that receiver around and block quite a bit, which the receivers might frown at, but if they win a national title, they won't. So I think there's a lot of chance that you're going to see Henderson and Judkins really show what they're able to do, and part of that is Chip Kelly. I just think, and obviously Howard's mobility too. It's again, I go back. I think it's a scary fit, Zach. I think this is really a spot where Chip Kelly really has the opportunity to show what he can do in Columbus. I think he's a much better fit than what Bill O'Brien would have been. And look, Bill O'Brien, I think, would have developed Howard quite a bit. He's got a proven commodity developing quarterbacks. But I just think Chip fits that team better. And I give credit to Ryan Day, basically saying, "Hey, I can't do this all by myself. I need help." There are a lot of coaches have an ego pretty big, and they would not admit that. And that's right now where I think it's going to help Ohio State in the long run, because there's not a program in the country that has had a better offseason than Ohio State, whether it was the portal, as I said, whether it was naming and getting these coaches, as I said, and also the other part of it that I think it's overlooked quite a bit, how hard it is to keep your guys at the school, and not only via not having them transfer, but not leaving for the NFL. Ohio State, yes, they lost Marvin Harrison Jr. That can't be magnified enough. Stover obviously not there anymore either because of graduation, but they got a lot back, and that's a credit to that program, to what they were able to do to keep those guys. That's as big of a win for Ohio State as the portal and those coaches are.
A lot covered in this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, and that'll do it for us. He's Jason Lord on the other side. You can keep up with him on X, formerly known as Twitter. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. Jason, always a pleasure, always a privilege, and can't wait to pick up this conversation in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Absolutely, Zach. Thanks for having me anytime.